advice would you give to a family looking to move to France with children?
Yeah, so if you're looking to move over to France with your children, I think it's great. We did it when ours were 4 and 7, I think. And although I'm initially from France, my kids didn't grow up bilingual. So that was a big reason for us wanting to move back to France, was for them to become bilingual and be able to speak French fluently. We were conscious of the fact that it would be easier for us to move while they were younger, because it would be easier for them to learn the language. I know people who've moved over to France with older children, for example, who are in secondary school, and I'm aware that it can be a little bit trickier with the language and obviously the level required at school for them to be able to keep up, and that can be a little bit trickier. Things that can help is taking French lessons before moving over if they don't already speak the language. I think if you've got older children, it might help to look perhaps at areas that have got bilingual schools or international schools. I do think, however, that these can be quite expensive depending which part of France you're looking at. So that's something to bear in mind, but it can really help. I went to an international school when I was younger, but at the time it was free, which I was very lucky to attend. So that's something that there are a lot of international schools across France. So that's something you may want to consider, and that will help the transition, because usually they will then have French as a foreign language taught in those schools as well for students who just arrive. When moving away, and let alone moving to a new country like France, where they speak potentially a different language to what you were brought up with and what your children speak, it can be a bit daunting. I mean, as much as I'm from France, I've got a lot of family in France. We've been to France a lot since the kids were born. My daughter was 7 at the time, and she did not want to move at all. She was kicking and screaming every day, to the point that we just left. we put everything in storage and we just left for France, thinking it'll be easier once we get there and she'll settle into it. Because we were questioning our decision, thinking, should we go ahead with this? She really doesn't want to go, and we think we're doing the right thing. We're doing it to give them a different style of life, a garden, a different culture, a new adventure. We had all these reasons that we thought was the right thing for our family to do. But it was getting to a point where she was so adamant she wasn't going. We were going without her. She was not going to go to France, despite having been to France all these, she knew France very well. So it was difficult. So we just went without having sold our house and found a house or anything like that. We just kind of thought, well, we're just going to go and figure it out once we're there. And actually, the minute we got on the airplane, the minute we left the house and got to the airport, that was it for her. She switched and she's like, oh, adventure. Oh, where are we going now? And then from then on, it was fine. And there was a bit of a transition period. That was a little bit tricky, where, both children were a little bit quieter than usual. They didn't understand what was going on. My youngest was 4 at the time, and he'd just started reception. And then suddenly in France, he was in a class where they asked him to nap every day, and he hadn't napped since he was 18 months. And it was just a bit like, he's not going to nap. So it was a big change in culture. Luckily for them, one of the things that helped them a lot in the transition was staying at school over lunchtime. They've got a much longer lunch break in France, and they have 4-course meals. You're talking starter, main, cheese, pudding, fish bread, and all of that. But that really helped them have that socializing with other children that wasn't in class time. So it's a little bit more relaxed. And they both like their food, so they liked having proper food to eat at lunchtime. That was a highlight of their day. So the first few months were hard, but then bit by bit, once they started getting the language, we moved in March. And so by the time they started at their new school in September, they'd been through a few schools as well that year, which didn't help. I think they went through 4 schools within a year. But by the time they started in September, we really noticed things starting to slot into place. But the socializing at school and then in clubs, and even meeting up with other families in the area, whether French or English, really helped, especially having some English families nearby, because I think sometimes when your brain just gets a bit with a new language, it really helps just to be able to speak your mother tongue. And then other things that we found when settling in, it came to a point, it's come to a point now that they speak French all the time, which is great, but we don't want them to forget their English. So now we're having to kind of fight them to speak English at home. And, we've got English TV, we watch films in English, and we try and insist that at home the language we speak is English, because I came back from England and everybody in France kept telling me my French was really good, even though I was born and brought up in France. So it was just a bit like, I know you can forget your language quite easily if you don't maintain it, especially kids. They will adapt so quickly and just focus on what's in front of them, which is amazing. And, you know, it's amazing how they can just pick up a language like that. But I think just give them time and space to take it all in. And yeah, we've never regretted it. It's definitely been the best thing for our family. And, you know, we've got extra space, we've got pets, we've got countryside, we don't have to worry about them going down the lane. They can, you know, all the village events we wanted them to take part of. It's really been a great adventure for them in their childhood. So it's been worth it, despite the initial rocky start. So if it's something you're considering and your children aren't quite on board, just keep talking to them, and, you know, just think of it all as an adventure. You know, what's the worst that can happen? You just give it a go. It doesn't work out necessarily how you expect it, and then you just come back. But I think from a lot of people I speak with, the worst thing is regretting not making the move, and you just think, oh, maybe we could have given it a try. And kids are great. They just adapt to their environments a lot quicker than we do. So there's a lot to learn from them.